He was it Hudson County police officer, right? The New Jersey police officer.
Yeah, he broke up.
Bayonne.
Yeah, Jersey police. Yeah.
Jersey,
No, I was born and raised in Bayonne, but I'm Jersey cop.
Jersey cop that was drafted or to as an undercover, and he infiltrated the. This is why I could never be an undercover, because I don't know. I can't say DeCavalcante family, and he wrote a book about it called The Ring, and it's a great read. I've been reading it, and believe me, to keep my attention reading, you got to be good. And it's a great book, man. I couldn't put it down. Thanks for coming on, Giovanni. Are you still there?
I think he's on tape delay.
You can tape delay, so.
Oh yeah. All right. So how you holding up? You look good.
Yeah, I'm hanging in, bro. I'm hanging in. Thank you for that. I appreciate you holding up the book. And yeah, Giovanni's Ring, My Life Inside the Real Sopranos. You got it right. It's DeCavalcante. So you're pretty close.
Yeah, it was tough though. I had to practice it.
That's all right. I understand.
And you brought a lot of people to the chat tonight, which is great. So you're from Bayonne, New Jersey, and the way you describe Bayonne, New Jersey, I've been to Bayonne quite a bit as a comedian. I like the neighborhood there, but it reminds me a lot of my own neighborhood that I grew up, Astoria, Queens. You mentioned how diversified it was, and tell us a little bit about what you remember about Bayonne.
Very much so. You didn't leave Bayonne, like you didn't leave Astoria, you didn't leave Brooklyn. If you were born and raised in a borough, Bayonne was like that. It was like Brooklyn-esque. You didn't leave. You didn't want for anything outside of the city. You survived within your own people. It was diverse. It was very diverse, all walks of life. But it was a working class people, middle class to, mostly middle class.
And your father was a cop.
Hardworking people at the time. The Mafia, the military ocean terminal, was up and running with the military. So it was all, you either became a cop, we were longshoremen, or you were just a local businessman. We didn't really leave Bayonne too much for nothing. Even Christmas shopping, we never left.
That's interesting. You didn't trek into the city too much, huh?
To visit family, family in Staten Island, Brooklyn, Astoria. You left to visit them, but you never, you stay close to the chest.
And your father was a cop, right?
Yeah, I'm third generation cop. My brother was a cop, my uncles. I was the black sheep, though. I never thought I'd be a cop. Like I describe in the book, I was the black sheep. I didn't like cops. Because authority, I defied authority. But it all came to play in my undercover world. So, it all has a way of working out.
Yeah, so when you talk about being the black sheep of the family, you had a pretty big sized family, but were you running around in the streets? Is that what it was? You consider the black sheep, or you just didn't know what you wanted to do yet?
Well, as I describe in the book, my relationship with my father wasn't that good when I was a young kid. My grades, I was a headache. I was one of those kids. I didn't pay attention to school. I was getting left back. I was always
as luck would have it.
But other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln?
Let's give a shout out to the people that are tuning in while Giovanni gets his. Hopefully, he can get online. I don't know why this happens to us. Factual breakdown. Sometimes the black sheep can be the most successful ones. Yeah. Did you hear what I just said? Yeah.
Nah, you were all broken up. I lost you. I got a horrible connection.
All right. So factual breakdown. Sometimes the black sheep can be the most successful one in the family.
Yeah, that's how it turned out. My relationship with my old man changed in the years to come that I came on a job and I became a good cop. I was a solid cop. I didn't work in that gray area. What I was taught and what I saw as a young kid. My grandfather's era was a lot different in policing, and my father was a solid cop. He was hard on me, but he was fair in the street, and he passed it on to me, and I brought that into my job, And then I quickly got a gold shield, no nepotism. I had to earn it. He made me earn it. And same thing with my brother. You had to earn your gold shield if you wanted it. He wasn't going to step up for you. He stepped up and got me the job, So there was a little bit of New Jersey politics involved, but once I got the job, I was on my own.
Mike?
Well, I was going to ask you, it's interesting on a couple of fronts. You talk about the University of Bayonne in one of the chapters, and that your education basically and how that served you well in your undercover role was the street because of that diverse background you mentioned earlier. And it parlays into one of the other chapters, Accidental Cop. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because when they offered you a spot in the academy, you were so nonchalant about it to where one of the people on the other end of the line, I believe it was the chief, said to you, "You better show me a better attitude than that." But there is a great story, I should say, about when you were in the academy, about how they taught you. It wasn't the conventional rule book way. Care to expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, traditionally my wife was on a job, and my father-in-law, and my brother went through different academies. They went through the harder academies, the Jersey State Police Academy, or some of the different counties that were more military style. They were more worried about how you dressed and how you marched and how you stood at attention. I went to the Jersey City Police Academy. They taught us how to be cops, and it was a good thing. They taught us the law, they taught us respect, but they taught us the street too. I had guys that I looked up to that I later on worked. They taught us how to be good cops. They taught us how to be fair. And if we weren't fair, we would get our heads handed to us, So it wasn't so much, standing there and pressing your uniforms. We had a little bit of that, but it was more learn the law, learn the job, be fair in the street. And that's what they taught us.
As luck would have it, you were riding your motorcycle back and forth to work, and one of your bosses saw you. And was that shunned upon, the fact that you had a motorcycle at first? Was it looked down upon at first until they realized they could use you for something?
Well, as I was growing up, to kind of get under my father's skin, I would always gravitate towards the people I shouldn't be hanging out with. And when the chief, Mike, had asked me earlier about the phone call I got that offered me the job, the chief of police of that department that I work for called me up. He had a relationship with my father, and he said, listen, I'm going to offer you this job, but you got to give me your word that you change your ways. You're not hanging out with outlaw motorcycle guys. You're not in the street anymore. And I gave my word. I promised, I'll leave that all behind. And I did. I said my goodbyes. I picked my side. I was going to be with the good guys. And about 9 months in, my uncle and I were working on a 77 Sportster, and I made a stupid mistake of bringing it to the precinct one day. And I rode it there with my uniform pants on, a leather vest, a white T-shirt. And, the cherry on the cake was I had my 9. We went from wheel guns to 9s at that time.
Yeah, me too.
And I took my 9 and I shoved it, no holster, I shoved it in my pants, and that didn't go over well, so the bike was totally street illegal. And he went up one side, down the other. And about 3 weeks later, after I promised him I would get rid of it, he called me in and he asked me if I had the bike. And, then my persona was that was my beginning, my undercover work. So,
yeah, that's a great story.
Yeah, I'm lucky I didn't lose my job.
Yeah. I like that. Coming in with the, what year did you go on in Jersey?
1990.
Oh, I went on in 92.
Okay, yeah.
So
good time to come on.
there was a lot of crime. There was some cracks in the street. It was good. It was you can make a lot of collars. So now all of a sudden the bike and your persona, it actually came in handy, because what happened?
It did. I was offered the opportunity to do a little light job, and I did that successfully, and that led into a little bit of a bigger job. And then back then, task forces weren't around as much in the Jersey side. It wasn't so much like NYPD. When you worked in your jurisdiction, in your city, you stayed in your municipality. You didn't go outside. And at that time, my first long-term, and I say long-term, my first undercover case was connected to an outlaw motorcycle gang. So that's where, in that picture you just showed, you saw that persona that I decided to have. Like every narc, once you get your gold shield, you figure you're the coolest guy. What's the first 2 things you do? You grow a goatee and you grow your hair out. And guess what? Now you're Serpico, So you fall into that a little bit. But it worked for me because it was what I knew in my previous life. I was working in a phone company. So that's kind of what I went back to.
It's like you're a chameleon in a way, because if you look at this, like first of all, you look at that one, you look like a biker.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you look at this one, you look like a mobster.
Yeah,
it's pretty interesting. You like a chameleon,
Sure. Yeah, a couple of slip ups along the way. The DEA, I did the undercover thing for them for a while, and the biker thing was great. But when you realize, an outlaw motorcycle guy is living on the balls of his ass, and a gangster, he eats bowls of macaroni, he eats in nice restaurants, so I changed the persona up, and it kind of worked out well for me. Instead of eating dog biscuits, I was eating pretty good meals on the government's dime. So it worked
when
out.
You say that they're living on the balls of their ass, obviously a biker his whole life is his bike. They're always working on the bike, always fixing the bike. Right. And I guess they're dealing narcotics is their primary source, right? Or maybe some, maybe roughing a couple people up occasionally. Muscle.
Yeah, growing up in the streets, I saw both sides of it. I saw the way the mob used the bikers, and even after I came on a job, they were still doing it. When I started working organized crime and vice, you know, the mob used to use the bikers to collect their loan shark, you know, the money they had on the street, or if they had figs that need to be collected, they sent them to do the collections.
Hey, didn't your sister marry? Somebody married a biker and they had the party in your house, and then a fight broke out. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was a family. That was with my sister. That was when I was a little kid. So, you know, my parents both struggled, you know, born poor, and we were very poor when I was first born. My old man was on a job, and I think he was making probably what, $7,000 a year back then. And one of my aunts got married, and they had the reception in my grandmother's low income. It was in the projects,
Yeah.
You know? And it was on the first floor. And we decided, I don't know who thought about this is a good idea to save some money and have this reception in my grandmother's 2-bedroom low income apartment. And all these guys showed up, you know, dressed to the nines, and my uncles with their leather vests, and they were in a particular gang at the time. And one of the guys, during the cut the cake, he grabbed a little bit of the, you know, they were always passing a bottle of grappa around. So they're drinking grappa and they're getting shit-faced. The next thing you know, when somebody leaned into the cake and flicked it onto somebody, and I swear to God, Mark, you can feel the entire block, not the building, and everybody's still, whoa, take it easy. But you can't tell these guys to take, and that was it. So my one aunt, she was 16 years old time. She wrangled up all of us kids, brought us into the bathroom, and threw us all in a claw-shaped, you know, the claw feet tub.
The old ones.
The cast iron tub in case any rounds started flying. But then the cops showed up, and it was you talk about a Donnybrook. It was just an all-out melee. My old man, even to this day, says I got the hell out of here as fast as I could. So
that is so funny.
But it all adds to your persona, you know, when you start doing deep cover work. These are all stories that I could pull from, and I could relate, and I could build rapport, and I can ingratiate myself with you or somebody else, you know, because I lived that life. I experienced that, you know.
I think what's interesting also, when we're talking with Giovanni Rocco here, his book is Giovanni's Ring, My Life Inside the Real Sopranos. He's Mark DeMeo, I'm Mike Colon. I think what's interesting is that when you started as an undercover, it wasn't the formal training. For a while, before you went to UC school, you kind of just did it, as you talked about in your book, off of what you had seen as a kid, and you adapted that into doing it pretty successfully. But I loved what you said, in that, well, when they were asking you, why should we let you into this academy? Why should we train you to be an undercover? You said, not just for yourself, I want to train the next generation on how to do it right. So as far as the training, and as far as some of the stories that you tell of what they were looking for in a UC and the close calls that you had in which they were looking to see where the wire was, that's a funny story in and of itself. What are some of the lessons that you took away from that school that not only guided you in your career as a cop, but you feel still guide you to this day in just everyday life?
I guess the emotional side of it, without giving too much away, Mike, because the one thing they do, the Bureau, when they comb through the manuscript, they cut a lot of that stuff out because I can't share tradecraft, but a lot of it is emotional intelligence when you really break it down. You know, it's that ability to relate to somebody and survive. And sometimes it's your breathing. You know, I wasn't taught breath work, but I researched that on my own. And once you start learning mindfulness and breath work, and you can control your heart rate, which is, you know, what I teach now to guys like first responders in general, it's a superpower. When you can control your breathing and you can control your emotions and you can harness that and turn it into a weapon against these guys, that's the kind of stuff that the Bureau focused on. But I went on my own to research it even more, to understand it even more, which made me.
You know, it's funny you bring up breath work because I've been doing it. I started probably 10 months ago. I wish I would have had it on the job. Yeah. I started doing Wim Hof with the cold showers and the breath work. And now I just finished my breath work, actually. I got it. It's probably like 40 minutes a day now. Yeah. But I use it before I go on stage.
Yeah, and it works, right?
Oh, it works like a charm. I use it to put me in the moment. Mm-hmm. Like you said, to lower your heart rate, but to be in the moment. Don't worry too much about what's going to happen later. Forget about the be here right now.
Right.
And I listen to the laughter coming from the inside the room, and I put myself in there with them already while I'm breathing. But the breath work, I never thought about that, but that's brilliant to use it in those situations.
Yeah, I used it in my situations, but now I use it because I teach guys that are brand new first responders, brand new cops, because it's important. You know, Mark, we talk about all the time, and the example I use is walking into a bar fight. You and I go in a bar fight. And we control the whole situation. We got everybody's good. Everybody's leaving. They're paying their bill. We're going to shut the place down. And then walks Mike Colon, the goofball. No offense, Mike. Right. And what he does is he throws gasoline on a fire, you know, and he just gets everybody emotionally deregulated and kicks everything up because that's his way of dealing with stress. And now we got to start locking people up and collaring. It's not the way to do it. control your emotions and you do this breath work. And I learned, you put me in a room with a bunch of sicarios and, internally, I'm about ready to go into cardiac arrest. But if I got my breath work and I'm controlling my breathing and I could be right here, that's perfect, And in this career, we need it, especially in this day and age with everything going on.
Oh yeah, you met your second wife Anna in 2001. She was a detective, and before we expand on your career, I do want to mention it because I found it sad, but also important to note. Her father was a federal law enforcement officer. If you can't say his name for security reasons, that's fine. Don't. But he was among the law enforcement personnel killed in the line of duty at the World Trade Center. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, he was, and for security reasons, I can't. But he was a high-ranking law enforcement officer that day, and he had a great career. He had a career before that one with the department that he was with, and unfortunately, he wasn't in the buildings that day. Like your true first responder and all the guys that responded that day. They weren't in the buildings when it happened. He just happened to be one of many heroes that while the people coming up and bringing civilians down, he was last seen going up the stairs and trying to help people out. At the time, he was 63.
Wow.
Yeah. But I always say, it's a sad thing. But if you knew my father-in-law, it had to take two buildings to come down on that man to kill him, because he was that big of a man and that big of a presence. So
that's interesting. So you're working this undercover. You're doing a little bit of undercover for infiltrating the biker gang, and somehow it leads to because there was a mob connection there. So you kind of like. You just jump to the next lily pad, which eventually turned out to be what's called Operation Charlie Horse. That was the beginning of that, wasn't it?
It was, but I didn't go in as a biker. I got rid of the biker persona years ago, decades, earlier. I got rid of that really quick. I cleaned up because I almost got myself in a couple of jams when I was with the DEA and doing some state cases where, it was close calls. I had a couple of kids in my first marriage, and I realized this stuff is going to get me killed. I mean,
you mean within the biker community?
My persona was a biker. I was dealing with the Bloods a couple of times, buying some street dope off of them, and things. But I didn't have that training, as Mike talked about earlier, and a couple of things went horribly wrong because I was self-taught. And I went back to my roots in the street, which is not the way to do it. I didn't have that proper training, so I thought, I'm done here. I shaved, I cut my hair, I took all my gear off, my earrings, and hung it all up. And then next thing you know, I thought I was teaching the government a lesson, like, you guys are going to get me killed. That was on a Monday. I showed up with the haircut and clean shaven, and by that Friday, I was buying kilos and dope off of Colombians and Cubans. So, I didn't teach them a lesson. So, so over the years, my persona was, as you see me here, this is how I did everything. And everybody I ever dealt with in all walks of life and all criminal organizations, I infiltrated after I went to the Bureau and had their training. That's when the persona of Giovanni Gatto was born. And that's who the story is about. And that's when I became that individual.
The book is titled The Ring. And the reason why it's called The Ring is because the reason why I'm asking is because I see that you have a pinky ring on now. Is that the ring?
No, it's not. That's my ring. Okay. So what I had done, Giovanni's ring, that was Giovanni Gatto's ring. For purposes of what if I need jewelry, we get it from the government issued like a car. And I took one of the, my Uncle Sam's ring, I used to call it. And that was my Uncle Sam's ring. It was a government issued ring. And again, it wasn't taught to me by the Bureau, so I could talk about it. I used to pull in my driveway and pull the government ring off, throw it in my cup holder. It never came in my house. And that's why I used it as a mental switch to remind me, okay, I'm done being Giovanni Gatto right now. I got to go be Giovanni Rocco, the father and the husband and this guy. So, because I didn't want that stink coming in my house. So I used it as a switch. And then it had double meaning because as I infiltrated the family, they eventually put me in charge of a small crew. My capo did. And I started running a crew for him. So that was my crime ring that I was running. So it has dual meaning. So that's why I picked Giovanni's ring.
I think what shocked me about the book is that you see just how active the Mafia still is. Now, the general narrative within the public is, well, they're not what they used to be. And they're not. They're not what they were during the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But they're still a very potent threat. Now, removing something like terrorism, for example, either domestic or foreign, and excluding that from the conversation completely, when you look at crime, specifically organized crime, how much of a threat, in your opinion, and especially given your experience, do the Mafia still pose in 2021?
They're still here. They haven't gone away, and they never have. They might have gone underground a little bit and had their terrorism after 2001 took it. We saw it on The Sopranos, right? Kind of what they portrayed on there. everything, all of the resources went towards that. And what happens all the time? It doesn't matter whether it's street crime, auto theft, gun violence, whatever the flavor of the month is. When an administration or a government puts everything towards one, well, guess what? Everything else is going to fall apart, and the mob has always been there. The mob has never gone away. Never.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't missed a beat. Now your players and your public appearance after Gotti and his trial, and then he got done. Everybody thinks they went on the ground, but they didn't. These guys are still. My capo got out of prison when his case started. The guy I originally, ultimately reported to, he had gotten released for murder, and he went right back to it. A lot of guys still do. The Pizza Connection guys are getting out, so you'll see all this discourse. They've never gone away. Their scams are still there. Everything they were doing post, pre 9/11 is the same as post 9/11. It's just that they have to watch what they're doing.
Well, which brings up an interesting point because. Stango, that was the guy you put away, right?
Yeah.
You also said that when he went to Nevada, he had some legitimate businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's always an interesting thing when we say somebody has a legitimate business, and it's hard for the average person. Like if you look at Casino, for example, the guy that was running the deli somewhere that screwed everything up because he was keeping the notebook.
Yeah.
That guy really worked in the deli.
Yeah.
Like he was there in the deli all day. Right. So it's almost like, people have this thing that, the mobsters are just sitting outside of Sacciarella's having the coffee all day. But some of them, they like to keep a beard on, and mm-hmm. they'll actually work their real job and have businesses where they're there all day. But they just have this side hustles.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where I came into play with my capo, with Charlie. Charlie Stango got out of prison. It took me a while to get around to him. We didn't plan this case the way it fell in. Like it was like that Tetris game. Everything just fell into place for us. This was just a narcotics deal that I showed up one night for bona fides. We didn't intend to say, okay, let's target La Cosa Nostra. Let's go after the Mafia. It wasn't like that. It was I met a person, and then it was my persona, the way I came off to people, and then this story spun out on who I was and what I can get my hands on. So by the time Charlie came to me and he got his claws into me, he was living out in Nevada, and then he was doing his own thing out there. But then I was committing crimes on his behalf here. And when he trusted me enough to tell me to start kicking up to him, then it became a criminal enterprise. And then ultimately, half of our business was legit. We were doing some things with bottling water. We were buying an ice glacier. We were buying a glacier, and we were going to bottle water. That was our legit thing. Mm-hmm. And we had some things going on with diamonds, and then we had some guys in construction and stuff like that. So he kept his hands in some legit businesses, but ultimately you make the most money underground. So that's what we did. We call it the right and the left.
It's kind of like Silvio Dante. Silvio had like the Bada Bing, but also he had all these other ventures, but the Bada Bing was the mostly legit thing. And so I was going to ask you, I said, as an undercover, you're playing to egos. You're not a pushover, and your role was certainly not a pushover. You were a serious guy. And that escalated throughout the book, without giving anything away. But also, these are people you're taking orders from. And even if you're not taking orders from them, you're dealing with them on an everyday basis. Louis the dog being one example. You don't want to piss these people off in general. You don't want to get killed because they will kill you if not themselves. And they'll make a phone call and you're done for. So as far as walking that line between being taken seriously, but also kowtowing to their massive egos, and they are massive, as you well know, how does a good undercover balance that?
You got to walk that line. You got to know when to step to the right, step to the left, or, look at Louis. When Louis first met me, there was that we rubbed each other the wrong way. He met me. I got out of my Escalade and he giggled. He laughed. He snickered because I was dressed apart. I didn't look like the people who I was with and hanging around, Charlie's nephew at the time. They were like low-hanging fruit. And Louis is a guy who is looking seriously towards this career of being in La Cosa Nostra and becoming a made guy. And here I am coming in. Now, all of a sudden, I gained the trust of Charlie. Louis wanted me to be with him because he was building a crew and ultimately looking forward to soon at that time period. Soon, he was hoping to get his button. He was hoping to get made. So when I started doing business with him, he was a great criminal. He was always on time. You could set your watch to him. He had all the right money. I mean, the guy was great business-wise. But now, all of a sudden, when I come to him and I say, nah, I'm going to be with Charlie, that rubs him the wrong way. Why? What did I do? Now, who are you to say no to me? So I had to get through that. And then the next thing you know, Charlie really wants to flex his muscles and pump his chest. So he introduced me to the administration. And that happened at that place that is like Satrial's. It was, you could picture it as that. You know, you made reference to it earlier, but that's where I went on record with these guys. You know, Charlie told me show up at he called it the cattle store. It was a pork store. You know, half of it was a deli and half of it was a butcher shop. And he said, show up at the cattle dealer. That's where we did it. And it was just like a scene in The Sopranos at Cetrial's. And he brought me in there and introduced me. And that really rubbed Louis the wrong way. And then ultimately, Louis did some things that, you know, I explained in the book that he just rubbed the family the wrong way. The administration was changing. The longtime boss was going to retire because he was aging out. So he was going to pass the torch. And there was a lot of infighting in the family. So, yeah, there was a lot of that, Mike. A lot of watch where you step. You can't be too much of a tough guy, but you can't eat crow either, you know? So you got to know when to step.
You know, a lot of times I would imagine it's a tough situation, especially if you can handle yourself physically, to look at another man who's maybe half your size, overweight. You could smack the shit out of him. And unfortunately, this guy has more power than you. Mm-hmm. And maybe he doesn't like your height. Maybe he doesn't like the fact that you can still have a full head of hair. Maybe he doesn't like the fact that you get pretty girls, but he's breaking your balls and you can't do nothing. And you know that you can fuck him up. You can just take him apart piece by piece. That's torture for me anyway.
Sure. But the thing with Louis was I always knew he carried a 38. You know, we had to see, as being an undercover, sometimes the worst thing we have is intelligence, right? Our intelligence unit just floods us with intelligence and information. What's coming from the street? What do we know about this guy? We know he carries a 38. We know he has pit bulls in the basement. And he uses guys in the street to do collections. And here I'm, you know, the day he told me he was going to chop me up into pieces, I was literally standing outside of his house. It's the day that Charlie went on record with me with the family. Charlie wanted to pump his chest out a little bit, drove around the neighborhood because he flew into Jersey to do this, broke parole and, you know, did all these crazy things. And then he tells me, drive here, go there. He drove me right to Louis' house because he just wanted to piss like a dog. He wanted to piss on his territory. And
that's because you were a good earner, supposedly? Why were you such a hot commodity?
Well, Charlie saw that I could earn. And then after a while, it took me a while to get in with him. I ingratiated myself. I like Mike said earlier, I knew when to step. I never came into this thing. They knew, I kind of give them the impression that I was a lone wolf. I never wanted to be part of the Mafia. I didn't say I knew about it. I knew how it worked. I knew what a made guy was. I made him explain it to me. And I did that by saying, look, I don't know too much about this. You gotta understand, I was raised by outlaws. That's my thing. And he understood it like that. So he knew I had that criminal element. He knew I had the criminal brain. The things I saw, like working homicides and stuff, you know, that stuff calluses a cop in general when you see that stuff. So I was able to relate. So if I saw something or heard a story, I was never taken aback by it. You know, it always kind of let it roll off me. Yeah, it's terrible. It's a terrible thing. You know, but so he saw those things and he identified, oh, this kid's like me. You know, I got two sons, but this guy's more like the kid I always wanted. I don't know what was in his brain, but eventually, you know, he did have a nightmare one time. And he called me out of the blue and said, don't ever call me again. Whatever you and my nephew are doing, if it's illegal, I want nothing to do. And don't ever call me back again. Do yourself a favor. I guess that's the end of the case. But we kept going in the beginning. And, you know, I come to find he brought me out to Vegas and we sat there and watched the Kentucky Derby. And he explained to me, listen, I had a nightmare. You know, I was institutionalized for a long time. You know, I'm a murderer. I'm a little bit crazy. That's what you said.
That's what he said to you?
Oh, yeah. You know, I'm a little gone, you know, and I don't want to. You know.
I like this guy.
And he goes, you know,
I'm a murderer.
Yeah, you know that, right, Giovanni? You know, I'm a little forgot, you know? Yeah. All right, well, but, you know, listen, this is how it's going to be. And he explained to me, I had a nightmare. I woke up in the middle of the night. I was looking at the fan on the ceiling. And I saw you hanging from the fan. I don't know what it was. I had a hallucination. And he went through this big, long story and explained. I explained in the book. But he said, you know, and that's what happened. You know, I said, oh, well, I'm sorry about that. But, you know, I would never turn on you. I would never do anything bad. I understand. And he would always finish, all right, now shut up. You know, I'm done. And I apologize to you. We're finished. We're moving on. And that's it from this. And then from there, he started calling me my boy. You know, go see this guy, my boy. Go to New York and see this guy from the Columbos. Go here and go see this guy from this family. That boy got it. This boy got it. And then, all right, my boy, carry on. And so I would report back to him. Yeah, I went to see this guy, Mike Cologne. He said this. Does he work? Should we do business with him, G? Nah, I think the guy's a zero. I think he's just a bottom feeder. All right. Yeah, you're right. So I don't know if he was testing me, Mark, or, you know, sometimes I think he really was. And because I passed those tests, I got a little bit more in a relationship with him. Then before
You mean like
I am a bottom feeder, by the way. That is accurate. So
no offense.
I get what you're saying though. He's some of these guys he's asking to meet could be idiots, and he wants to hear what you tell him. He's an idiot. Otherwise, this guy doesn't know. He doesn't know. He can't read people good.
Right. And then you always go back and ask the Gambino guys. How'd my kid do? See, and then I found out later on that he was testing me, that he was saying, I got guys watching you. And I didn't know later on, I found out it was the Gambino guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then he, when the real trust was there, you go back to legitimate things. We were buying the Olympic Gardens Lounge. It's an old casino and gaming. It's a strip. It's the only place in Vegas that has gaming and strip. And it was closed at the time. We were buying that. He was buying it. And, when that was done, I was going to manage it and I was moving to Vegas. But the murder plot put all that to bed. That never happened. It's kind of good because I don't know if I'd be married today if I was still running a strip club out in Vegas. So,
tell us a little bit about that. To me, that's the most fascinating part of this is that, the perfect example in the book, you describe how you were at your daughter's soccer game. You were wearing shorts and a T-shirt. You look nothing like Giovanni Rocco. You look like a dad, and you also had your family there, but you were kind of luckily standing alone. When a connected guy came up to you and asked you, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And just that proximity, that geographic thing, like you're still in the neighborhood. To me, that was shocking.
Yeah. Well, I didn't mean that to happen. I mean, I thought I could let my guard down, but it just so happened it was a statewide thing, and this guy was from North Jersey. And this whole soccer tournament was taking place somewhere in Central Jersey. So he came there and I thought, hey, listen, I got the weekend off. I'm not, I'm just going to hang out. And my parents were visiting and they wanted to watch my daughter play. And, they didn't have any clue of the length of undercover work that I was doing. And then here I was between games. And, here's this guy starts walking towards me and he's with the other Borgata, the other family. And I looked up and I said, man, that doesn't look like him. And as he's getting closer to me, I said, oh, shit, that's him. And like, what do I do now? And he looked up, he was on his phone and I flanked him this way. And as I came around, I said, hey, and we used to call each other Gooms, hey, Gooms. And he looked at me and he said, Giovanni. And he just stiff-armed me, what are you doing here? And then it wasn't like, hey, what are you doing? It was like, what are you doing here? You following me? What? Why are you here? You don't have kids. And it became very confrontational. And long story, I explained it in the book, but I was sitting wherever my chair was on a bumper of his car. And I had coffee and I, drove places with him in this car. But I was so unplugged at that time, trying to enjoy my family, I never paid attention to it. So he was walking right towards me, but walking towards his car. And thank God I came up with a quick story. I bullshitted him. And then thank God my wife saw that. We always had a plan of, because she worked major case. And, if anybody ever saw either one of us and we disappeared, thank God we planned that because she was smart enough to grab the kids and drag them away because they were small at the time. So
we do have a question in the chat and then I want to say something and ask something as well. But there was a woman here by the name of Lupus who wanted to know what an undercover's job is and how you get chosen for it, which you kind of covered earlier, but to answer your question.
Well, an undercover is the last tool in the toolbox, right? So law enforcement has all these tools. We can use investigators. We can use confidential informants, human sources. We can do surveillance and we can do the investigation, or we might go up on a wiretap. We might tap your phone or do your computer or something like that. So the technique of an undercover is so valuable to any agency that it's the last thing you want to use. It's the last thing you want to grab in that toolbox. So because of the craft, because of the trade craft that it is, it's the act of, it's the art of deception. And you don't want to use it too many times because the general public could find out. So when especially the FBI, when we use that technique, it's the last thing we ever throw it.
So now take me through a night of hanging out with your friends in the family. When you were, are you still there or did you disappear again? I think you froze. Let's use this time.
We'll do the Joe Murray.
Well, let's Alicia B. Oh, there he goes. He's back. Well, I brought up Alicia B. Breath work is brilliant. I was lucky to learn it 41 years ago as a freshman in college. Helps most everything. Yep. We are big proponents of that, Alicia. Let me see what else we got here. I love. We'll come back to the people in the chat in a second. So back to you know what's I think what's romantic about when we think about the mob life. Obviously, not working is the best thing about it, and the other thing is the getting to hang out with your friends pretty much all day, like your boys, you know what I'm saying, like your crew, and
Yeah.
having fun in that way and going out to dinner. And was it as much fun as it's portrayed? Were you guys, were you allowed to cut up and just, bust each other's balls, even when the captain was there and stuff like that? Or is it just the crew guys that bust each other? And when the captain comes, you kind of shut up and behave?
Yeah, never when the captain's there. I always kept it very professional if he was around or if he was going to be around, and I insulated him. See, that's where my bona fides came in, because I became an insulator to him, even to his own son. When the crew, and I asked him, do you want me to use Anthony, his son? Do you want me to use Anthony for this? No, don't use him. Don't tell him anything about it. Just you do it, and it's just me and you. So he didn't want them all. And we cut up all the time. Like, I had a little office that he had put me in, and he put me with another guy, and he sent me there because the guy was having some problems with his business. So he said, listen, I want you to go there, and he's having some problems with payroll. Go help him out. And, I have a certain amount of criminal authority I can do. I can't commit acts of violence unless it's portrayed and it's acted out, as a skit. Like if it's other undercovers or something like that, that's one thing. But so, yeah, we would have a blast. We would sit in my office, and I had a back office with couches and desks. And, one night, one of the guys snuck in with a girl, and, he had relations with her in my chair and broke my chair. And the next day I came in and I acted, I was really ticked off, like the fact that he slept with this girl in my office. And, we had a blast. And, Christmas wrap, I had these guys, I had a bunch of girls there, and they offered to wrap the gifts that we were giving. If we had gifts for our kids, or, one of the guys in my crew had presents for his kids and he couldn't hide them home. He'd say, listen, G, can I leave yeah, you can leave the gifts here, and you'd have a blast. And the funniest story I ever had was when we were out to lunch, and I talk about it in the book, and they were all sitting around and we're eating lunch, and we're at an Italian restaurant, and they're talking about RICO. You gotta watch this RICO. This RICO gets us, man. We're all done. And I knew what they were talking about. This is, again, right, tradecraft. That fine line. And I let it play out. I knew they were talking about the racketeering act, So they're going around, RICO. It's probably one of the best tapes I ever made in my career. And they're going around. And I threw my plate like my captain would do. And I threw a fit. And I started dropping F-bombs. Who the F is this RICO? And why are all my guys afraid of one Spanish guy named RICO? And then I realized, like, how I had it with the crew, because half of them were looking at me. They didn't have the balls to say anything. And then finally, Charlie's son started laughing, like belly laughing. No, cuz, Cousine. It's not a guy. RICO's a thing. We talk about. And he went on to explain it. And another guy chimes in. He goes, no, you don't know what racketeering is? No, what are you talking about? No, racketeering, like you're doing with the drugs, like I'm doing with the stones. And then we're kicking up, and then Anthony kicks, like we're all kicking up to daddy. Because now at this point, Charlie was daddy to me with his son. And he said, all this stuff we're doing, it can put us all in jail. Oh, really? And he goes, I said, from now on, nobody does anything without checking with me.
You know what? It's interesting. You get a crew, right? You're out in the street. You're basically just 3 or 4 of your friends from the neighborhood. And let's just say you want to steal something, make a little extra money, and you start stealing stuff, and then you start peddling it and getting rid of it. It's not going to take too long, because after you do a couple of these robberies and you're getting merchandise out in the street, you're selling stuff, before somebody's going to find out who are these guys, and how come they're not. We should get to know them so we can protect them. And by protecting them, I mean have them kick up a little bit to us. How much you get? You know what I'm saying? We see it all the time in the movies. But how long after that do you start? Because it's not an easy path to become get a mob associates and being that. You got to work your ass off, I guess. Stealing, you got to get a good reputation of being a thief or figuring out some business stuff, right?
You do. And at that point, prime example is another time when I'm leaving a restaurant and, they're desperate. They're hungry for money. These guys have to eat. This is all some of these guys do, is commit crimes. They don't want to have anything to do with a legitimate job. It's either guns or drugs or whatever it is they're doing. And one night I left, and everybody went their merry way, and I'm standing outside talking to one of the guys in the crew, and it was dark out, and there was an Exxon station across the street, and this guy while he's talking to me, he processed the whole thing, and he says, "Gee, not for nothing, but the whole time we're standing here, about 20 cars had to go through this gas station. Are you watching this?" I said, "No, what are you talking about?" He says, "We should go over there and rob it. It's dark. Let's go. I got ski masks and guns in the trunk. Let's do this right now." And he how do you talk your way out of that? Because if you're a real true gangster and a criminal, that makes a lot of sense. But I said, "Nah, what are you, crazy?" I said, "They're probably all crazy." "Nah, these guys are."
He'll come back.
Yeah, he'll come back.
Single Mama 4. Love hearing Rocco. Me too. Let's see what else we got going on here. Kathy Bates. Oh, yes. Back in the 90s, the Joker poker machines in the back of bars and laundromats got raided. Yes, they did. I remember that. That's the way cops used to eat for free. If you had a Joker poker machine in there, you weren't going to say no to me if I wanted dinner.
There you
So
go. So I tell him, you live to fight another day. We're not robbing anybody. What are you, crazy? We'll put the old man in jail. We'll put me and you in jail. No, we're not robbing it. Just relax. I got something brewing. Wait, I'm working on something. We're all going to eat. The holidays are right around the corner. It'll work out. And
you were very sorry about that. You were very quick though, as an undercover, because there was a story that was told earlier on in the book where, and I would have crapped my pants if this was the case, because somebody said, "Well, you're not with anybody. Who are you with?" Because all of a sudden you're around and we got all these cops breathing down our neck. Somebody says that to me in that role. You're going to see a certain brown substance rolling down my leg, to say the least, and I'm going to cut and run. But for you quickly said, "Why does everybody keep asking me that?" You played it off really well, and you were able to convince them. So in moments like that, you talked earlier about you're practically ready to go into cardiac arrest. Was that natural? I mean, part of it obviously was your training, but was part of it also natural instinct given your background?
Yeah, because I had seen the weddings. I had been at my family's. I saw acts of violence. I saw crazy things pop off. I knew when something was going to boil over. And again, as a cop, you get that feeling in your belly when you know a car stop is going to turn into something more, and it's the same instinct. So, and you just control it. You reel it in. So, yeah, if somebody said something to me, you got to be thinking in the back of your brain, your wheels are spinning at 110 miles an hour. Meanwhile, the front of your brain, you have to maintain that. That's where the breathing comes in. You can't shake. You can't bite. It ticks and tells are everything, because I'm watching you. And just like guys go to college, they go to prison. And when they're in prison, they practice. And when they get out, they're a better criminal. Same thing with us. They're constantly training. So you have to be aware of that, because one little tick or one little tell. And the worst thing was when they followed one of my surveillance girls back to the FBI building, and they called me out on it. How about that one?
What surveillance girls, you said?
I had a team of surveillance people on me, and I went to a meeting, and it was a pretty rough meeting to begin with Luigi, and then some other things happened during that meeting. It was a terrible thing. I had an associate with me, and he was the one that set up the meeting for me. And by that time, I had a lot of balls in the air, so I wasn't really dealing with Louis too much anymore. So I had somebody set up the meeting for me, and at the end of the meeting, Louis went on his merry way. But then later on, I found out, because he called me out on it, because when Charlie went on record with me, that's the day Louis said to me, "So that day I met you, guess what happened? There was a car out there in the parking lot, same parking lot we were in. My guys told me, don't come back to the car. We got heat." And I waited. And then when I jumped in the van, they told me the car's been sitting there the whole time. And they said, "So Giovanni, guess where we followed the car?" "I don't know." Guess where we followed? "I don't know." "You gonna tell me?" "FBI building. We followed it back to the FBI building." So two things. Either A, you're a rat. So not I'm a cop, I'm a rat. What do you do to rats? They kill rats, right? You exterminate a rat. Or so now I got to sit there. You got to really play the part now. Really? So you take a half a step. And again, your brain knows this guy's a made guy. He recently got made. If I touch him, Charlie himself would have to kill me in that world. Cosa Nostra rules, you don't touch a made guy. You put your hands on a made guy, that's automatic, instant death. He probably could save me because my guy's a captain, but you'd have to be worth your weight in gold. So as he said to me, we followed it back to the FBI building. What do you think of that? So two things, you're a rat. And I went at him. I took a step towards him, opened my jacket up, and he said, "No, hear me out. Or two, you're being followed, and you brought the heat to me." So it wasn't, I was a cop at that point, because a couple of years had gone by. So there wasn't the fact that I was a cop. Everybody was walking around. Nobody was getting locked up. So They were more concerned that I was a rat or being followed. So, yeah. So
How much time are we talking about right now? How
In
many
the
years?
case-
How many years are we talking about this
That's about-
operation?
The operation was just 3 years, but this is about 2 years in that incident happened.
I have a feeling like I would have probably, because you mentioned in the book about how, the big shots, they wear suits and ties, and the soldiers are more, the guys that we always make, you see like the track suits.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? I think I would have been a tracksuit guy. I don't know if I would have ever wanted to move up. I never wanted to be a boss on the job. I always liked being a detective or a cop. I didn't want to be in charge of anybody.
Nah, I always said it was hard enough to be in charge of myself on a job, Mark. I didn't want to be.
Yeah, that's what I used to say.
Everybody wanted me to aspire to be a boss, but I didn't want to go. I like my detective shield. I can answer for myself, and that's the lane I wanted to stay in.
But how about in the mob?
Well, the mob, I mean, we did everything. I had the track suits. I had the nice button-down shirts and the pants, but I did both sides of it. And even the capos and the bosses, they were dressed in the track suits. That doesn't change. It depends on what kind of meeting you're going to. Like the day Charlie went on record with me and the administration came to the pork store, everybody's dressed to the nines. Charlie was in slacks and old, camel, jacket, and they were dressed, for business. Even though they were coming to a deli and a pork store, it was, they dressed to the nines like they were going to a ceremony because it was something important. I wasn't being made. I never claimed. I think if the case would have went on, and I know that because I made tapes against Charlie that, he indicated that he was going to be upped again from captain to higher. And then after this deed was done with the killing of Luigi, I would have been proposed for membership. I think it was that November. The case finished in March. As soon as Charlie came off of parole, he was going to be bumped up, and then I was going to be made.
Tell us about the DeCavalcante family, because we know the 5 families in New York, but that family seems to be a smaller family, kind of sort of rough around the edges, but they're not included in the 5 families in the city, are they?
They don't. The only reason they don't have a seat on the commission. That was the thing. When the commission was formed, but the DeCavalcantes are the longest standing U.S. Italian-American mafia family. Longest standing. Longer than any of the other 5 families, the major 5, right? But they were considered the farmers to the Gambinos. The Gambinos would farm a lot of work out to them. But as far as they were at the commission meetings, they were at the appellation meetings. That's how long they've been around. And now the boss of the family, his father was at the appellation meetings. That's how long they've been around. So they're longest standing. They're extremely violent. And I guess that's part and parcel to why they were more. They're the guys that would be the cleanup crews. They were known as the farmers. They would farm. Other families would farm work out to them if something needed to be done. But they've been around forever. They've been through the mill. They've exchanged bosses. Sam the plumber was the original. Sam DeCavalcante was the original boss of the family. And then there were a couple of in between. They had their ups and downs. The family was infiltrated with informants. Some of the bosses turned state witness against the family. That was Vinny Oceans and what's his name? Vinny Palermo. He became a witness, cooperating witness for the FBI. But John Riggi was the longest standing boss, I think. And he was respected by all the 5 families because he controlled everything. He controlled the docks in Jersey, and he had the construction in New York. So he had all the labor unions and everything in his pocket. So that's why they were so powerful.
We have a couple of questions from the chat. One is from Staying Classy. How long do you have to train, and how do you prepare for going undercover with the mob so that you fit in without standing out, I should say, getting them to let you in? She says, fascinating yet scary. And somebody else asked, given the fallout of the investigation, do you fear for your life these days?
I always fear for my life. I still fear for my life for some of the murderers I put in jail. So I put guys away for a long time. So, and I did different organizations, but so outside, just being a regular investigator, cops put their lives on the line every day because some people just hate you forever. If Mark put somebody in jail 20 years ago and this guy now lost 20, he blames Mark. Mark's the guy who put him in jail. I'm always looking over my shoulder. I'm always vigilant. I'm hyper vigilant. But the training is intense. It's again, I can't talk too much about it. I could tell you there's a mental end of it. You have to be assessed. You have to go for a whole site. You thought it was hard to get the job with the psychological profiles you had to do. You have to go for regular checkups from the neck up. You had to make sure that you were still operational. You could still be used. So it's not that they just threw stuff at you and let you go crazy in the street. And again, there's different levels of undercover work that even the Bureau does. This was one of their biggest, what they call there's different levels, and it's online. You can read about it in their handbooks and stuff. But this is one of their most intense cases they have.
Did you have a nickname?
Me?
Yeah.
What, my different personas?
No,
I
I'm
had
talking
other ones
about,
throughout my cases.
No, I'm talking about
that's
a
part
nickname.
of why I was good at what I was doing. I'm
talking about a nickname.
One time.
A nickname. Did you have a nickname?
He froze up. I'm sorry. That was a funny sequence.
No, because I want to get at this guy's nickname. This guy has a funny nickname over here. I want to get at. We might as well read the commercial right now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We get the laughter under control. Go ahead.
Oh, he's back. Are you back? Is he back yet? No,
not yet.
Let's
see. He'll be back in a second.
This is okay. Listen, folks. If you ever get in trouble, this is the guy to call right.
I'll put it. Yeah, I got it. There you go, folks. If you need an attorney, you know what I like to say: hurry and call Joe Murray. If you need any attorney, there's no sense in calling any of these ambulance chasers. Joe Murray will help anybody in the greater New York area. His telephone number 646-838-1702, or you can call him up on his cell 718-514-3855, or email him joe@jmurray-law.com. So if you're ever in a bind, don't even bother with anybody else. Hurry and call Joe Murray.
I love that. Hold on, he's back. No, I was asking you if you had a nickname, because the cops, undercovers never have a nickname for some reason. It's always like they're just, because this guy's nickname, Charles Big Ears Majori. If you you don't have really control. If you're from the street, like everybody in my neighborhood had a nickname. You never really had control over what your nickname was, and if you didn't like it, too freaking bad. But I wouldn't be happy if my nickname was Big Ears.
No. I don't know. I don't even know why he got. Well, I guess you do, but I don't know if I'd had the balls to ever call that to him, to his face. I don't know. I don't know if it's sometimes they don't want to be referred. Like I grew up with guys in Hudson County, New Jersey. Well, I watched guys, the old mob bosses from my neighborhoods. They were slick guys. Like some of the guys would say, "You don't ever refer to me by my real name. You call me Mr. George." And his name was, something completely unrelated to George. So sometimes it's code. Sometimes guys like it. A lot of my guys, I had Johnny Balls, I had Whitey, I had, Louis the Dog, Charlie Big Ears Mugera, Charlie the Hat. He always, a cool name is great, but my guys call me Cuisine, they call me Gio.
It's funny. Like I had a friend growing up, and his parents owned the bagel store. So he was Tommy Bagels. His whole life, he's Tommy Bagels. And then they sold the bagel store, and he wound up buying a gym. And his name was still Tommy Bagels, but now it's Tommy Bagels that owns the Powerhouse Gym.
Yeah, you know that.
So, like they say, forget it. I won't say that because
you never lose your nickname. That's what you are. Once you get it from the street, the ones I had growing up as a kid, you never lose them.
You know what they what do they say? You build a million bridges, nobody calls you a bridge builder, but you suck one cock, and for the rest of your life you're a cocksucker.
I'm glad you said it because I use that all the time.
Oh, you know what's another funny thing I saw? Oh, soup sandwich. Tell me that. I love that saying.
Oh, the soup sandwich?
The dog. You said you described the guy as looking like a soup sandwich. What does that mean?
Yeah, the guy looked like a soup sandwich, and I got that from being a cop, right? You saw a guy in uniform, some fat old salty old guy, and you referred to him looking. He looks like a soup sandwich.
Did you ever mix up a cop term with a street term?
Nah, because I was I did a lot of undercover work for most of my career, and I was plain clothes that I always made it a point not to. Even when I got pulled over by cops in my true name, I had 4 different identities, 4 different social security numbers, dates of birth. But when I was in my true name and I'd be commuting back and forth to work, if I got pulled over by a cop, I didn't say, "Hey, brother, sorry about that," like a cop would use. My thing was boss, like an inmate uses. Inmates, that's how committed we were to this. So when you got pulled over, it was, "Hey, boy," and automatically these guys thought, the slick cops that know their street, they would say, "Oh, you've been in prison." No, I just call you boss because hold on, here's my badge, here's my ID, don't write me a ticket. But you always kind of want to think like a criminal. I didn't wear cop stuff when you were in my house, even though I was married to a cop. We didn't have that paraphernalia around the house. For the longest time, my 2 older kids didn't even know what I did for a living. When I lived in Jersey, I was in North Jersey in my first marriage. My neighbors called up the DEA and reported me.
Oh, really?
They report. I wasn't even doing anything wrong. Just the hours that I was keeping because I was working nights. I was in narcotics. And I had the long beard and I had the hair and everything. and they thought I was an outlaw or some kind
Damn it, he went away again.
of a drug dealer, and they called up and ratted me out to the DEA. They reported me. So,
you know what?
and
We're running out
you know,
of time.
you're living the life that you're supposed to be living. You know, it keeps you in check.
I did want to ask one more question. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I have one too. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess what I wanted to ask is, you talk a lot about the personal toll that it takes when you're coming home and you have to decompress and you have a wife and you have children and getting out of that personality. In your estimation, given how much of a toll it could take on your life in general, from your experience, would you say that being an undercover is a single man or single woman's game as opposed to a family man or family woman?
No, I don't think so. My younger years, it was harder because I was a single guy and I got that Superman persona, and I thought I was a cat's meow because everybody's telling you what great undercover you are and all these different agencies want to use you. That went right to my head as a young guy. And I think it probably cost me part of my first marriage. Being married, being older, being mature, and have the training, that all played a part. Being mature was the reason why I was able to do what I did, Mike, and maintaining my composure and thinking about things and processing it while I was in the heat of the moment. You were a more mature individual.
Now, my question is, when Charlie Stango goes away, his girlfriend moves around the corner for me. Was that a coincidence or was that on purpose?
Yeah, she didn't move around a corner, but she was in enough close proximity where it was a problem. You know,
was it a coincidence though?
Yeah, it was all coincidence. Yeah. Wasn't even.
So it wasn't like she was wanted to rub your face in it. I'm going to stay close to you, and I'm going to keep telling him where you are and who your family is, or stuff like that.
No.
And how did you find out about that? Did you bump into her, or did the job tell you that?
Yeah, intel, FBI intel.
Wow, that's pretty interesting, man. Charlie,
so they kept tabs on everybody afterwards and still do it. What's that?
No, for the people to get the book, once they read the book, they'll see that Charlie the Hat Stango was the guy that was looking out for you, but he had a girlfriend, a Gumad on the side, Patricia, and she just coincidentally happened to move very close proximity to where you lived with your family.
Yeah,
your real family.
Yeah, all coincidence, and it was way too close for comfort, and it was one of many situations where, again, it's Jersey, it's New York, no matter where you live, you're gonna bump into somebody. So it was rough.
All right, we're approaching the hour here. Let's just go into the chat a little bit and just thank the people that have tuned in tonight. Giovanni Rocco, what a great guest, man. I wish I could have, just chill with you and hang out with you for a couple hours. You seem like a great guy. Smee, thank you. She says, wow. Single mama 4 soup sandwich. She gets a kick of that. I want to say that all the time now. This guy looks like a soup sandwich. I'm gonna incorporate that in my. Can you have Rocco back, please? Yeah, we'd love to.
All right.
Kalia, does Giovanni still live in New Jersey? I'm pretty sure he's probably not going to say.
No, you could tell by my Wi-Fi connection.
Yeah. He's in the middle of nowhere somewhere.
He lives in parts unknown, as they used to build the Undertaker. Whenever the Undertaker would come in, it was parts unknown.
Right,
you know what the movie is? It's you as having to disappear in witness protection as an undercover, and then for some reason they mix up and they put you in a small town somewhere in the middle of nowhere where all the other mobsters live. And they're like, "Oh, Giovanni's back," and all is forgiven. And
see My Blue Heaven. My Blue Heaven.
Yeah, I love it.
One of my favorite movies.
Yeah,
all of those mob movies and the classics.
Oh, that's the best.
That's one of the best movies.
My favorite line is when he goes, close the freezer. You're melting all the frozen goods.
You melt all this stuff.
Yeah, I love it's so stupid, the movie, but it's so good.
Yeah.
Peter Pranzo, he wrote the book Harlem Raiders. He's great, former cop lieutenant, cool guest, Giovanni. That's what he has to say. Staying classy. Thank you, Giovanni. God bless you and your family. Love this interview. Thank you so much. For those of you who have enjoyed tonight's show, don't forget, please, that we have a Patreon. We could use your help if you subscribe. It helps, procure guests and then pay Mike. This kid cost me a fortune over here to sit in with me. He's getting like $20 an hour, this freaking kid.
So you're no bottom feeder, Mike.
Well, thank you.
That's great, man. Oh, man. So I guess we could one final question, Mike. What do you got for our guest?
No, I got nothing. I just want to say it's a great book. Again, the book is Giovanni's Ring: My Life Inside the Real Sopranos. You should get your hands on it. It's I can't put it down. And I just want to say thank you. It was really fantastic hearing your story and sitting in on yet another great show.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you very much. And I just signed a whole bunch of copies, and I have a website now to sell them. So if anybody wants a signed copy, please go to giovannisring.com. They're running out. It's a good thing, I guess. They have to go to reprint. So I guess that's a good thing.
No, that's a great thing. I'm not a big reader. I always joke around about it,
Yeah,
but I had to sit down and, you know, because this kid's up to chapter 9. Did you open the book yet?
I'm up to chapter 16.
No, but when you said to me you were up to chapter 9, which was like 2 weeks ago, I was like,
Yeah.
oh man, I better start. And I did. I got up to chapter 6, and it was it's a good read, and it's almost like I get it because you're talking to me like I know you had somebody else, Douglas Schofield, probably helped you write it as well.
Yes.
But it sounds authentic. It doesn't sound like an author is writing it. It sounds like just the way you tell the stories. I was laughing. I was fascinated by it. And I got to tell you, man, you know, at the end of the story, you start wondering to yourself, was it all worth it? And I know you had a brilliant career and you did a lot of remarkable
I get that a lot.
things.
Yeah, it was worth it. It's the job. I'm committed to the job. Yeah, I'm committed to the job, and I still am to this day. And, you know, it's what I chose to do in my life and make a difference. And I would. A lot of people say, "Would you do it all over again?" I would. It made me the man and put me where I am, and it made me the father I am, the husband I am, and, you know, and I wouldn't change a thing. Even the good and the bad, all the bad that came from it afterwards, and it cost me my career. I would do it all over again. It's, you know, service, right?
Do you ever think about going into acting?
Acting?
Yeah, because, you know,
I got some act to begin with. So
well, yeah, well, you have so many years of really acting, like real, like your life depended on it acting. That would be a breeze for you.
Oh yeah, it would be a breeze.
Yeah,
but no, I never thought about it.
Yeah, I think you'd be great. I think you'd be great.
No, I appreciate it. If you know anybody who's hiring actors, let me know. I'll go audition.
A lot of these guys that play mobsters in the movies, like he mentioned The Sopranos earlier. I was looking at a tape from the 70s, Paulie Walnuts. You know, he's fresh out of, I think it's the early 80s. He's doing some interview in somebody's living room, and he's fresh out of prison. You know,
you mentioned earlier, you mentioned the guy from the casino with the
wait, come back.
Deli. That was Vinny Vella. I met him working on location. I was working as a consultant on a film, and he wasn't even an actor back then. He had just finished Casino, and he had owned, I think, a bunch of trailers. He was in a union or something. And he didn't know who I was. And he kept asking me who I was. We had the greatest interaction. We became friends through the whole thing. And that's how he fell into it. You know, he was just doing like lunch trucks or something for productions. You know, that's how he got into that role in Casino. You know?
Well, I wish you the best of luck with the book. I want to thank you for coming on. You were a great guest. Everybody was very, very happy with you in the chat. Mike, any parting words?
Well, I just want to say briefly, if you want shameless self-promoting time, come over to my channel in just a few minutes, because tonight will be the premiere of my interview I did a show earlier today with the great Bob Costas. Bob was great. So if you want to come check out that conversation with Mr. Costas, please do. My channel's MC's Audio. And
on behalf of Police Off the Cuff, thank you, Giovanni. You were a gentleman.
Thanks, guys.
It was a pleasure having you. Anytime, if you write another book and you want to come on, whenever you want, you're always welcome here.
Thank you. I'm very honored. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All the best to you, man. Be safe out there.